Why surge pricing is so profitable feels normal, but it is rarely accidental, and its architecture dictates the long-term health of the entire platform. When an app multiplies a fare during a snowstorm or after a concert, the public assumption is straightforward. It is digital price gouging, a reactionary lever pulled to extract maximum margin during an acute event. This assumption feels logical because it mirrors classical economics. A sudden spike in demand meets a limited supply, and the price shifts upward to clear a temporary bottleneck. The classical static view miscalculates the actual mechanism at play. True profitability thrives on long-term ecosystem engineering, far beyond the mechanics of clearing a single transaction. To evaluate how that profit is generated, we have to stop looking at individual spiked fares. We need to examine the high-frequency algorithmic architecture that manages the entire network. Traditional retail operates on manual, cost-plus pricing models. The platform economy replaces that structure with high-frequency algorithmic interventions. This is distinct from broader dynamic pricing, which systematically shifts prices based on long-term inventory levels. Surge pricing is situational reactivity to an acute, short-term demand spike. The algorithm triggers mechanically, relying heavily on the immediate demand-to-supply ratio or predicted capacity shortfalls in the next several minutes. Once triggered, platforms deploy specific uplift mechanisms. These take the form of simple multipliers on the base fare or highly contextual microzone surcharges. The publicly stated rationale for these mechanisms is straightforward. They restore equilibrium by rationing scarce capacity to those with the highest willingness to pay. The underlying corporate reality is more complex. These algorithms are direct adaptations of yield management logic, originally developed by the airline and hospitality industries. Yield management focuses on inventory velocity, prioritizing system-wide health over immediate demand clearing. Rather than simply exploiting a temporary spike, the algorithm is constantly optimizing the long-term health and structural margins of the entire ecosystem. This brings us to a phenomenon known as pricing inertia. This is the tendency for prices to remain static, even when market conditions justify an increase. Manual, spreadsheet-driven pricing teams consistently fall victim to this inertia. They miss short-lived windows of opportunity where demand is temporarily high. The algorithmic solution is designed to close that gap. It instantly tracks the demand spike, capturing the unrealized value that a human operator misses. The algorithm identifies these pressure points at a granular level, targeting specific SKUs or geographic microzones. It reacts within minutes, securing micromargins before the temporary demand window closes. While a single captured micromargin is insignificant, aggregating these fleeting, fragmented margins across millions of transactions creates massive platform wealth. Acting quickly at the micro level also isolates demand shocks, preventing them from cascading into systemic service failures. Algorithmic speed automates the capture of invisible, wasted opportunities, turning them into a reliable profit stream. The algorithmic architecture must also account for the supply side of the platform, the complex, irrational behavior of human labor. The classical rational model of labor supply assumes a positive elasticity. If wages go up, workers will logically increase their hours to earn more money. Gig economy drivers consistently contradict this model. They operate on a psychological heuristic called income targeting, driven by reference-dependent preferences. Drivers set a preconceived daily earnings target. The moment they hit that target, they display negative labor supply elasticity. They log off and go home. This behavioral quirk threatens the platform's viability. On busy days with high earnings, drivers hit their targets faster and quit exactly when demand is peaking. The platform counters this by using the surge multiplier as a high-frequency causal signal, artificially stretching the labor supply. Breaking the psychological habit of income targeting requires an intense, highly localized financial incentive. Surge pricing is a required architectural tool. It manipulates negative labor supply elasticity to prevent the marketplace from collapsing under its own demand. These human behavioral patterns also create spatial mismatch, a static inefficiency that peaks during late-night periods or specific urban events. Given the choice, drivers naturally cluster their supply in downtown urban cores, where demand is dense, highly predictable, and perceived as safe. This is a series of spatial maps measuring consumer surplus in Austin, Texas. In the no-surge model on the top right, A concentration of deep reds saturates the outer areas. That represents a severe drop in consumer surplus. Without a surge mechanism, consumer surplus in those suburban rings plummets by up to 65% at night. A dark, stable cluster remains anchored in the downtown center, visualizing the deep spatial inequality of a uniform pricing model. Look at the benchmark map on the top left. The coloring is lighter and balanced across the entire geographic grid. Surge pricing dynamic incentives solve the mismatch. The algorithm actively pays drivers to chase the surge out of downtown and into those underserved peripheral zones. By forcing supply outward, this spatial rebalancing dramatically reduces the vacant time drivers spend searching for passengers. Solving this static inefficiency guarantees reliability and availability across the entire map, extending the platform's reach far beyond the urban core. When we evaluate the algorithmic impact on total social welfare, the financial realities contradict the public perception. This table tracks economic surplus redistribution during surge events. Surge pricing increases total social welfare by 2.15% of gross revenue. Rider surplus jumps 3.57%, securing availability for users. However, driver surplus drops 0.98% as new supply dilutes earnings. Paradoxically, platform direct profits decrease 0.50%. A profit-maximizing corporation accepts this immediate loss because the technology is optimized for absolute market clearing and network welfare over isolated rent extraction. The algorithm unevenly redistributes the surplus to prioritize the long-term volume and dominance of the network over the margin of any single transaction. That extreme reliability drives long-term user retention. By capturing the high willingness to pay segment, the platform normalizes itself as an always-on utility. Structural profitability requires expanding the total market size, which allows the platform to absorb its fixed costs across a massive, dynamically balanced ecosystem. The effect is structural, a deliberate result of high-frequency architecture, and now you see it a little more clearly.